Hey, Impact Leaders. Garland here. I've got something exciting to share. On January 16th at 12 p.m. Pacific, we're officially launching the Community Impact Collective. It's going to be a virtual housewarming party, and guess what? You're invited. Think of it as the ultimate meetup for innovators and change makers who are passionate about driving social good. You can expect some live networking, an interactive session, and of course, some music. But what else is in it for you? Well, you'll be meeting future collaborators, you'll get an exclusive look at our community features, and you will be able to snag some early bird perks as a founding member. Grab your virtual drink and join us. You can RSVP by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to see you there.
Hey, changemakers and visionaries. This is ReImagining Community, where we dive deep into the stories of leaders who are reshaping the world, one community at a time. I'm your host, Garland Fuller, and every episode is a radical act of connection. We're not just talking about change, we're breaking down how real people are creating it right here, right now. This podcast is more than conversations. It's a bridge where we are sharing stories that offer insight and inspiration. Whether you're an entrepreneur, consultant, volunteer, artist, or an organizational leader, this is your space to listen and learn. This is your call to create impact in the communities you hold dear and that hold you up. Let's reimagine what's possible together. Hello, and welcome to ReImagining Community. My name is Garland, and I'm here with the lovely Marissa Garza. Hi, Marissa.
Hi, Garland.
Do we want to talk about how we know each other?
Yeah, that might be helpful for people because you're probably like, who is this Marissa person and why is she here with Garland? I've been listening to this podcast with Garland for such a long time and now there's this Marissa person here. Garland, I think our story goes back to 2018, 2016, somewhere in there. We were
before COVID, basically. Before the world shut down.
Before everything. There was like before a couple befores in that situation. But we connected through a community, actually.
We sure did. So I'd say shout out to Coach Mo.
Yeah.
She is amazing at what she does. And so if you are ever a woman I need to figure something out. My career is either not doing what I want it to do, or my career is not showing up in the way who I need to be. Like, she's fantastic. So at that moment in time, we were both in that moment.
That space, yeah.
In the space of, okay, I need something more than what is available to me. And I remember we met in that cohort.
Yep.
The cohort was over. And then I was traveling to Chicago for work or for some reason. It had to be for work.
Yep.
And I remember that you were in Chicago. And I was like, let me text Marissa and see if she's down to have dinner with me.
I couldn't say yes fast enough. I was like, yes, let's go. I'll get on the train. I will be there. And I just remember that conversation, like, was so easy, so like very much like what you're hearing now. And it was so great to connect with someone. And I think that's like what community can do, is it can really help you find people like we found each other.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And then lo and behold, I see a message on LinkedIn. Podcasting, I do podcasting, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, geez, Marissa was podcasting. And again, I'm like in her DMs, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. I need to restart my podcast. Next thing you know, she's here. So I literally reach out to people. I am not one of those people. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? What's going on? Let's do it. And I know a lot of people, because when I teach my students at USC, they're like, do people reach out on LinkedIn? Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't want people to see what I'm doing. I'm like, what are you talking about? That is the whole reason for the platform, is that you're supposed to let people know what you're doing, and they are supposed to receive this and take this information and possibly reach out to you if they need something. And so when it happens and it's kismet. I feel like this is kismet.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels it's like gold. This is amazing.
And sometimes, like in that podcast post, like I didn't even realize that I had done that much podcasting this year until I like sat down and I was like, oh, I should probably tell people that that's the thing that I can do. So let me go do that. And that's what came out of that from my side was just me realizing document what you're doing throughout the year, I think is my big takeaway from that because you, most times you're doing much more than you think that you're doing. Because at least for me, I can only see what's in front of me at this moment in time. But there were a bunch of other moments where I was doing things and I took the leap and put that out there and was so glad that we were able to reconnect through LinkedIn and so glad that you're relaunching your podcast here, Garland. I know this is the first episode, first season back, and I am going to help guide you and the audience through reestablishing this podcast. Let's get started.
Yeah, let's go.
So, Garland, why don't we just tell the people, like, what made you bring back the podcast now?
I'd say experiences that have made me realize I love this podcast space, but also have a greater sense of knowingness of what I want to do with this. I think the first time I did the podcast, it was very much of a personal project that I wanted to get off the ground and wanted to see come into fruition. And so it was very much of a playful, what's going to happen, let's see. But this time around, I like know what I want to do. And I feel like this is going to be just the best because I have a real like purpose and a real just fulfillment of what I want it to look like. And I'm excited to be able to bring it back with all that I now know that I didn't know before.
Did you want to talk a little bit about like where you were when the podcast ended and where you are now and connect the two for everyone? Because I know your story, but I don't know if everyone knows your story.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So when I ended the podcast, I said, still coming out of COVID. There was COVID still amidst us. At the time, I was working heavily in the DEI space, and it felt very heavy during that time. All that's been going on with diversity, equity, and inclusion. At the time, I was working in an organization where I felt like doing a lot of that work was my work. I was also involved with an organization called AREP, African American Real Estate Professionals of Los Angeles. And it was a space that at the time had a lot of runway. It was an organization that was on the cusp of growth and expansion. And I joined the board just at the right time. It felt like an opportunity for me to take a lot of the professional experience that I have had and use it in a new way in another arena with different people. And I learned a lot in that experience. Here we are 4 years later. I've done so much work with this work that I don't think I knew I was good at, and work that fulfilled me in such a way that I just was like, I need to be doing more of this. I need to be hands-on, working in spaces where I can see the fruits of my labor make an impact on people. And so in that process of just learning and growing and trying things, this organization gave me, I think, a runway that I didn't even know that I needed in order to fulfill certain things that I just didn't have in my day job. My day job still felt very boxed, bureaucratic, political. It still was like, we just need you to do this one thing and nothing else. And I feel like I'm such a multi-dimensional, multifaceted, throw my whole self into things person. And it just wasn't enough for me. And so getting an opportunity to work with this organization allowed me to do more and be more. And that made me want to do more than that. I was like, oh, if I could do it with this org, I wonder what that could mean for me to go out and do it with other organizations. Keep in mind, I had started doing some consulting. I had started working with organizations on the side. I had been teaching at USC as an adjunct professor. So I started dipping my hands in other pots of things to really just see what Garland can do.
Yeah.
And I honestly encourage people to do this at some point in their life. Just see what you can do. It doesn't necessarily always look like what you think it should look like. Career counseling and coaching in that world became something I started to do more of. people would come to me. That wasn't ever anything that I necessarily thought is special, but it started to be considered something special. And by working with the students that I got to work with at USC, I started to really get more practice with it and teach others how to do it. And so all of this just started happening. And so I needed to take a break from my podcast because I just felt, okay, something's got to give here. And when I have come back now, it's you have to share all of this stuff that you've learned in these past 4 years. You have to give people the tools that you've been using in order to do some of this work. Particularly right now in this time, I feel like we need each other more than ever. People need to get involved with whether it's their local community, whether it's a specific organization, or if it's a YMCA, if it's a choir, if it's a professional trade organization like the one I was a part of. Like, you just need to get involved. And I can't say enough about how it can transform not only how you see yourself, but you're putting yourself into the world in a way that allows for you to give and create legacy. And all of those things, I think, are just really at the heart of who I am now that I was not when the podcast ended.
What a exceptional journey and reflection that you just shared with us all. Thank you so much, because you could say I've only been not podcasting since COVID, and that could seem like yesterday, but our years today mean a little bit different than they did to us back then. What is a year? What does that even mean anymore? And so I think your perspective on what you did with the time in between then and now is really valuable to share with everyone.
Yeah.
I noticed also at the start of this podcast, you called this podcast ReImagining Community with Garland as opposed to Fuller Circle. So what is your intention with this space now that you've gone through this journey, and what are you looking to do with the podcast now? How is ReImagining Community going to be different than the podcast before?
I feel like ReImagining Community is really opening up the communities that you are in currently, whether you know you're in them or not. Some of us volunteer. We're joiners. I'm a joiner. For me, I join and create. That doesn't feel scary for me. I know for others, the idea of even being with a group of people seems overwhelming. And I think COVID definitely did a number on everyone in quarantine and isolation. I think we all went inward or just stayed home or stayed in. And so the idea of now even going back out, whatever going out looks like to you, is very different. We have digital spaces now that we have created in order to facilitate, I think, digital spaces. Prior to COVID, very rarely people were using Zoom. People were flying all over the place. Now to jump on a Zoom is no big deal. To go to a digital space, whether that's social media or a community that you've created for yourself online, a chat room or whatever, that's, I feel super normal now.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I would love ReImagining Community to be about is to give those spaces more intention, more purpose. You feel as though you're connected. There's an opportunity to create greater impact together. What I know about social isolation is that it's very easy to think that you're the only one going through something, or that it's only, why am I having a hard time getting back out there? Everyone's having a hard time getting back out there. I think some people are better at it than others. But I would love this space to be, how can we reimagine what community looks like with what we have now? We have digital tools. We have in-person, I think, is still very important. I don't want to negate that. I honestly believe that when we get together in person, you really feel the collective shoulders that are right there amongst you. And you also realize there are people right in your midst that you maybe aren't even tapping into because you're scared, or because you just, I don't really know. My favorite is, I don't really know anybody. I'm like, how do you think you're going to get to know anybody?
Garland, I have said those words to you. I have. Yeah, you live this life. So yeah, I know that feeling of, I don't know anybody, but I actually know more people than I think that I know. So it's a very important concept to be talking about, especially as I think the concept of community is becoming more in the forefront of people's minds. And how do you see that playing into the space that you're creating here?
So I think about my own life and places that community came in, and also spaces that I've been starting to create. Two examples that for me really embody community is when I was in college, I took a class, but I actually had to apply to become a sexual health educator for the health center at UC Berkeley. And we would meet once a week to go over the information that we need to know very well. And then we would do a clinic. And whether that was a health clinic, actually going to the clinic and like being there, or also going out into the campus and doing outreach where you are going to sororities and fraternities and dorms and various spaces within the college campus and delivering sexual health information, which seems like at the time, I think when I did it, I just thought I'll learn something and it gives me a chance to like do something different. Now looking back on that experience, I feel like it shaped me in a way that I didn't know at the time, in terms of giving me communication skills, in terms of making me comfortable being in spaces talking about difficult things. It gets no more difficult explaining sexually transmitted diseases to 18 to 22-year-olds, okay?
Yeah.
Or walking a young woman through what may be her first gynecological exam and what that might be. And so we learned how to do that. They taught us. And I think from that experience, it made me feel like I can teach and I can have difficult conversations about a lot of things. And it's not easy. It doesn't make anything easy. It just, I think there's a confidence of what would this look like if we really just talked about it. And so creating spaces where people can really have intentional relationship and conversation is, I think, a big part of community for me. If we're going to get together, don't get me wrong, I love a good drink or a little cute outfit or a little themed event. I love a white party. I love a sneaker ball. I love the things. But if we're going to congregate, let's also make sure that we are like checking in with each other, that we are hearing how we're doing, that we are, oh, I went through something similar last year. I can totally tell you how you should do this. Or, oh, you're struggling with this problem? Oh, I did a PowerPoint on this, or I have a spreadsheet. Or have you thought about using this software program to figure that out? I feel like sharing information and best practices is huge. And so much of the work that I've been able to do has been through asking people for help. We don't ask people for help enough. And so that is a big part of community. Another part of community. So I've been going through my daughter's educational experience since she was 5, probably before that, but probably paying attention since she was 5. And she got to a new school and I was like, do you all have any affinity spaces for parents here? Because I'm used to schools that have affinity spaces. And they said, no, we don't really have anything. And I was like, oh, if I were to create something like this, would you all support it? Are you guys open? They're like, sure. So myself and another mom, we decided to co-lead a BIPOC parent affinity space. She's a former educator. I like create affinity spaces all the time. And so it was a normal, I think, wonderful pairing. And we essentially just once a month, we meet with other parents. We deliver information. They tell us what they want. We go find the resources and put it together, send it out in an email, or just say, jump on this call. We're going to record it and send it out to everybody. It's not that much. It is a little bit more, but now when I walk on that campus, I like, people know me. I know other people. Like the school doesn't feel so foreign anymore, because I've been able to create something that makes me feel seen and makes other people, I think, also feel seen. And so a part of community for me is just representation. It's also saying, hey, I need this. If I don't see it, can I create it? I love asking first. Let's just not create things for any reason. And sometimes just looking around and seeing what's already there and what you can plug into. I think we sometimes feel like we have to start stuff, and sometimes you do, but a lot of times if you just look around and ask, there's a place to plug in that people have already been thinking about this, doing the work on it, have also had a similar concern, or also celebrating something. It's always there. It's just we have to look. So those are, I think for me, reimagining is what else is possible. It doesn't always have to be super serious, formal. It can also be fun.
We need fun. We need fun right now. I think sometimes when people are thinking about building, like just the term building community can sound so arduous. There's some sort of huge task, but as humans, we connect through fun. We do that stuff. So I'm glad to hear that fun is on the agenda for
Oh,
reimagining
fun.
community.
Oh, for fun. I literally am a part of a group that sends out emails, and every first Sunday they're salsa dancing. So it's not always business and always whatever. Like, I feel like that's the natural spaces that we are in sometimes, that it's very formal, very official, but you can get together, whether it's a run club, whether it's a choir, whether it's a dance group, whether it's going to see dance performances.
Yeah, that's humans like other humans usually. You just have to find the right humans. And you could do that when you're creating these spaces because you're basically saying like you did you at the school, you're like, "Hey, I need a space. This is my space." And all the people that wanted to be in a space like that didn't know that one was available and could find you. So there's like a reciprocity that I'm hearing in the story that you're telling in terms of community as well, is that not only you serving other people, but you are also fulfilled at the same time.
Totally. It is definitely, you're giving, but you're getting back. I feel like so much more sometimes.
So, what can people expect to hear on Reimagining Community? What kind of stories are we going to be telling here? What kind of things are we going to be sharing other than our best practices, things that we've learned in the past? And I say we, things that you have learned in the past 4 years. What stories are you going to tell here in this space?
Yeah, I feel like I've come across some really interesting people. So because I'm a people person, I ask people questions about themselves, and they tell me typically because I think I just am curious, and I'm harmless. There's nothing I'm going to do with this. I'm not typically even sharing the same kinds of space, but it's always, oh, really? Tell me more. Or they'll tell me about something. I'm like, really? Wow. And for me, it's narrative and story. One, it just harkens back to who we are as human beings when we sat around a fire and listened to stories every night to pass time. Also, oral tradition in general in many ancestral cultures have been how information has been shared generation after generation. We talk about grim stories and but grim stories have been around forever. And what are those?
Fables, like all the fables, the tortoise,
Aesop's fables, all
Yeah.
of those things. I feel like story is for me, and I think it goes back to my like reading Rainbow, like
Love it.
PBS 80s summer reading, like life. I love stories. I love hearing stories and reading them. For me, I still read stories to this day of memoirs of people that are doing interesting things. And so I think we think of always people who are doing extraordinary things, like we're looking for big. And I'm like, people are doing extraordinary things every day here. They are living, walking amongst us today. We don't need to wait for them to be given an award or for some publication to say they're amazing. I think people love awards. Heck, recognition feels good, not taking it away. But I think there's amazing people who are showing up for their community every day and doing cool and interesting and amazing things that, one, you should hear about. Two, so that, again, we're all doing it and we're all going through it, but also to inspire you to maybe want to get involved. I don't think that when you hear someone's journey, you can't not only see yourself in the story, but think, what could I be doing? Or how can I be contributing in whatever capacity that I can contribute? Sometimes it might be volunteering your time. Sometimes it might be being on a board. Sometimes it might be just saying, hey, I have space. you guys want to have something in my space, it doesn't always have to look like huge, amazing, complex thing. And I think when we talk to people who are doing cool, interesting, fun things and how they've come to this space, it encourages you to consider what impact can look like for you, what community and doing things together can look like for you. And my hope is that it inspires you to want to say, you know what? Yeah, what if we get together once a month for a book club?
I just started a book club actually for similar reasons. People are trying to read these big books on social justice. It's very overwhelming for people to look through. Some of these texts are like really dense texts, and everyone has these books that they want to read, but they're not reading them. So I was like, we could just put a thing together and we could read it together, and it doesn't have to be like a regimented thing. It's just time where you're reading the book together. And I think that's another thing that has happened in this time that you were talking about between the last time you were podcasting and now, is like things like body doubling work online and having more like co-writing things. These type of activities are definitely more popular, and so that can be community. It doesn't have to be like this big huge thing. I literally just set up a meeting like that's what we did for this book club. So yeah, I love that you're looking to inspire people here with those stories, because and also, I like the call that I keep hearing in what you're talking about is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just, there is probably a community that you can just join, or volunteer a resource, or and that resource even being time, and still be part of the community. It's not as hard as we think that it can't be. But our society has eroded in a way to make us think that it might be really hard to do.
Yeah, it's eroded. And I think we also just think, oh, that's one more thing. Just one more thing on my list of things to do that I'm always doing. But every time I come out of these experiences, I feel more hopeful. I often feel more inspired to do something. I also just think, wow, like there's some cool people doing some cool things. Yeah, let's go. And I think we need more of that energy in the world.
I love it. It's a great reason to have a podcast. I know the podcast is not the only thing that you're starting up. Did you want to tell people about your other project that is going on as we speak?
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we aren't going to just be talking about community. We're going to be in community, literal. I am creating a digital community that will have, I think, this vibe, this energy that you see here. I personally think that if we can come together, help each other, learn from each other, inspire each other, both digitally and in real life, because I love a good in real life event, I feel like we're just going to be so much better as people. So the name of my community is Community Impact Collective. And what this community is going to focus on is giving people the space to be empowered, to collaborate. All the change makers, all the social justice warriors, the people who are interested in creating a better society, whether that's in a nonprofit form, a social enterprise, a for-profit, a foundation, an arts collective, whatever. If you have community as something that is in the forefront and the center of what you do, and you want to be in with others who also feel that same way, this is what it's about. I honestly feel like we are needing to get together for our own self-preservation.
Yeah.
And my hope is that this space will be there to continue to keep you engaged, because whatever is happening in our crazy outside world, when you are with people who continue to keep the fires of your heart going and encourage you to be better and encourage you to use the tools that you have in front of you, you realize that you can do anything.
I will be a testament to that because I have been in community with Garland for a while now, and I do feel like I can do anything based on just the. She's very good at creating spaces where there is space to do something, make a change, and she believes in you. Getting into this community is going to be like life changing for the people that get in there, but it's not like life changing in a, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to do so much work. It's just like life changing in the, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that are gonna hold me up and keep me going. And I've been lucky enough to see what is going into the community. I know it's gonna be open a little bit later, not at the same time as this podcast, but we are working on it, and there are some fun things in there, and I'm just so excited to see this take off because I think the combination between the podcast Reimagining Community and then showing the Community Impact Collective as a product of that reimagining is just going to be a really powerful thing for this community. And I'm so excited that you're following your gut and going with this because it's so needed.
Thank you so much. I will tell you that this has probably been on my heart for a few years. And I'd say this year, doing a lot of soul searching, also doing work in community with other people. Every time I come out, I'm like, God, this was so good. I'm like, why am I not doing more of this? Like, why? And then I just, you can do this. What are you doing? And people who know me in real life, I feel like my energy is infectious. I also am very much like, why not? Let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah. We learn something and then we pivot and we figure out something new. No big deal. I feel like we don't give ourselves enough grace to make mistakes anymore, or we don't give ourselves enough grace to say, I don't know. And so I want to be in community with people who are taking the armor off and saying, I don't know what I'm doing, or help me, or I've got this really amazing idea. I need to brainstorm it with you. We're going to have some weekly Mindset Monday stuff. We're going to have some looking at some books. We're going to have some book club action. We're going to have some looking at some films and documentaries and things that make us like say, ooh. And we're also going to meet up in real life with people that we met online, and we're going to enjoy their company and get to know them and feel good being in their presence. Oh, and there will be music because your girl cannot do anything without a song. Okay. We will have a playlist. There is going to be joy. There's going to be a little bit of sass, a little bit of, oh, hell no, or oh, hell yes. And so bring this together and you've got Community Impact Collective. Yes. I really want people to ask questions, dive in. Yeah. And this is a co-creating space. I want to make that abundantly clear. I do not have all the answers. I am not the guru. I am not the alpha and the omega. Okay. If I know anything about community, we are constantly co-creating. We are constantly taking feedback and instituting it. We are also asking people what they want. We are also trying to deliver on what they want. And so for me, although I am the host, the guide, the person who's, creating the container, I am not going to be the one that makes it so that we only have to do it this one way. Tell me more. Why should we do it some way different? Or, you know what? Actually, I've tried that before. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you why that did not work.
Yeah, those are like really important conversations. Garland, I'm so excited. It sounds like in Reimagining Community on the podcast, you're going to bring some people on, tell about these great stories, talk about community, re-examine, reimagine what that means, and then really put it into practice in the community that you're building. So I am so excited for everyone. What's the best way for people to be involved at this point? This is the premiere of your new podcast. So what is the best way for people to follow along and get connected with you while you're doing all this great work?
Yeah, of course. Share this podcast. Like, that's a no-brainer. I feel like you can just share this very simply. If you want to become more involved, there will be a link below for you to find out more information about the Community Impact Collective. And if you want to join this community, I would love to have you. Another way to get involved, I'd say, is to join the mailing list, because you will be getting all the details on when things are happening, and you'll get it right in your inbox. I love a mobile app, guys. I love a mobile app. So
There's an app for that.
there is an app for that. Okay. So all of these, I'd say, ways to connect are there. Of course, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'd say there a lot. I'm also on TikTok and IG. I started TikTok this year. If you want to know how Garland really feels about the world, go to her TikTok. Okay. Because it's a lot more unfiltered and a lot more, oh, hell no. Or did you just see? Or, oh my God. That is the fun part. So I would love to connect, and I'm excited. I'm just excited to be not only here in this moment with you, but to be able to do this. I feel like this is a calling at this point. And if you're answering the call, let's go. If this conversation moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because every week we're bringing you more stories of real transformation. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and tag the folks in your circle who need to hear this. Want to go deeper? Sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. Now is the time. Are you in?